Hello everyone, today I'm gonna give you a small introduction about mobile phones and mobile network. I'm gonna go over 4 points. The first point is the hardware in smartphones. Then I'm gonna give a brief introduction into what software is being run in today's smartphones, and then I'm gonna branch a little bit to talk about the mobile network infrastructure that we all rely on to use our mostly data and phone. And then I'm gonna give some information about user experience. So when we talk about hardware in smartphones, there are the components inside the phone which start from the processor. The processor, or what is called as SoC, which stands for System on a Chip, is what makes the smartphone act as a computer. Like, you can achieve more with the phone than only calls and text as we had in the past. Then there is the display, as you all know, which has come a long way since the old mobile phones that had these green or bluish screens with the tiny digits, to today's smartphone screen that actually exceeds even home televisions. Then we have the battery, the memory, and the sensor pack. So let's have a look at an iPhone 6. This is a photo of the inner components of the iPhone 6. We have the screen over here, we have the back cover, we have the battery, and we have this chip, or actually this system board, or what we call the motherboard. This is actually what makes the phone run and achieve tasks. And you have all the other components like cameras and sensors and speakers and microphone that all are connected to this board and are processed by the processor. When we talk about iPhone, there's always Apple's processor. For the iPhone 6, it's A8, and it's a super powerful processor. According to Apple, it's 50 times stronger and more powerful, or faster if we can say, than the original iPhone 1. We have other chips that go into the motherboard. For example, as listed here, we have the Qualcomm baseband processor, which is here. Qualcomm, as you may know, is one of the biggest, or even the biggest, telecommunication provider. I don't think there's many phones out there that don't have Qualcomm chipset in them. For example, many Android phones rely solely on Qualcomm processor. So instead of Apple having their own processor, Android phones will have a Qualcomm processor, and I'm gonna get to that point. We also have different chips from different vendors, like Bosch here is providing the accelerometer sensor. We have RF Micro, which is here, and is providing the antenna tuner. So have a quick look at the photo. This photo was taken from a website. I'm not sure what that website's name is, but thank you guys for this photo. Hope you don't sue me. So this is how the iPhone 6 back looks like. Again, we have several chips from several manufacturers that are connected in one board. What I'm trying to say here is, it's not only one company that makes the iPhone, or any other phone for what matters. It's a collection of companies. It's imagine each one of these companies, the amount of research and budgeting that they're putting to achieve a better product every year, and that's why phones are moving so quickly, so fast, improving so fast. If Apple had, if Apple has improved the processor 50 times, then so did most of the other vendors. They also improved their products, whether it's a sensor or memory or mobile chip or an audio amplifier. That's why you can see phones getting much better every year, at least in terms of features. Maybe you would agree with me if in terms of quality, but I would still say they're improving and the prices are going down, well, with the exception of the iPhone. So as I said before, when Apple uses their A8 processor, other Android phones, or even Windows Phone by the way, use Qualcomm Snapdragon processor. 805 is the latest, so it's kind of in the same range of the Apple's A8. Although it's not present, we wouldn't find it present on all Android phones. It's only present in high-end mobile phones. As of today, it's only available in the Samsung Note 4 and on the Korean versions of the Galaxy S5 from Samsung and the LG G3. But sure, it will appear in all other phones because that's what happened every year. We can see here that the radio chip is the same for most phones. Well, not all of them, but Qualcomm makes what they call it Gobi or whatever, and this chip provides communication. This is the architecture of Qualcomm's 805 Snapdragon processor, or what they call system on a chip. The reason it's called system on a chip because it's a single chip that combines all the features that you can see in front of you. For example, this is the actual processor, this is the graphics card, this is the memory, well, and it shows some features as well, like 4K multicast, which I believe supports TV output at 4K. We can see also practically every feature that is listed in the phone's datasheet is practically made by Qualcomm. Let's move on to the screens. When we talk about displays, there are only two technologies out there. One is called Super LCD. Well, practically it's just LCD with the word super making it more fancy. And there's AMOLED. AMOLED is made by Samsung. I'm not sure if other vendors do make it as well, but I think it's only made by Samsung. The three biggest manufacturers of screens are Samsung, LG, and one that not so many know about, it's Japan Display. Japan Display is a company that was formed by Sony, Toshiba, and Hitachi to compete with the Korean smartphone screens, and they actually they are competing. They make the screens for the latest iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. But let's look at the two different technologies of screens. We talked about Super AMOLED, that is practically found on Samsung phones and some others. I think Nokia has Super AMOLED as well, made by Samsung. And this is the LCD or Super LCD. The first thing that you would notice is with Super LCD, we can break like we can see how each pixel has 3 sub-pixels. So this is a pixel, okay? It's got blue, green, and red sub-pixels. What happens with Super AMOLED is that they have pixels or sub-pixels that are connected to more than one pixel. For example, we can see green and red here, but we can see only one blue, right? So what happens is the Super AMOLED screens tend to be a little bit bluish, but only if you compare them with LCD screens. However, Super AMOLED has a feature. They don't have a backlight, so the pixels light by themselves. Whereas with the Super LCD, there is only one single light that lights the whole screen. This makes Super AMOLED more, I would say, consumes less power and looks better with in blacks. So you actually can switch off the entire pixel so it looks actually black, whereas here it will look gray. These are the resolutions that are available today. The highest resolution that I'm aware of is 4K. 4K means, well, 4086 times 2160. So the 4K is the number of pixels that are found in the horizontal axis. So if you start counting the pixels, and pixel, by the way, means the small square that we talked about before, which is this one. It's a square that's got three, well, it's actually a triangle here. That's got three lights, one blue, one red, and one green. And by the combination of intensity of light from each subpixels, this pixel will appear as if it was another light. For example, if you want green, you will switch off blue, switch off red, and leave the green on, so you'll have green. Otherwise, you could combine the colors in an RGB manner and you get the colors that you wish to get. 2K is not that common, but it's found on some phones, with not with the exact resolution as written here, but it's still called 2K because it's within the range of 2000 pixels in the horizontal axis. Full HD, that's found on most TVs today. It's also found on most high-end Android devices. It's as well found on the iPhone 6 Plus. Although the Note 2 and the LG G3 and actually Galaxy S5 Prime has 2K. All of them have 2K screens. As I mentioned before, it's not exactly this resolution, but it's within the range of 2000. That's why it's called 2K. iPhone 5, iPhone 5s, and iPhone 6 as well have screen resolution in the range of HD. This is called HD, this is called Full HD, this is called 2K, and this is 4K. And this is the DVD that you actually can compare with where we were and where we're at now. So in the past we used to watch DVDs on this resolution, and now we can watch movies at 4K. So when we talk about 720p, that's actually iPhone 6 and low-end Android devices. When it comes to power management, in fact, batteries have not improved as much as other components of phones have. For example, as we saw with Apple's processor, they have doubled like 50 times. But the batteries, in a best case scenario, they have doubled once or twice at max. Storage has come a long way. It's at least, I would say, 4 to 8 times better than it used to be with the first iPhone. That's of course in terms of capacity. And also the innovative use of sensors. So what I'm trying to say here is we still need to see more improvement in battery sizes and power management. The newer processor use definitely more power than older processor used to, because they're more powerful. But batteries are getting better, power management is getting better, so we can survive with these phones, especially that big screens as well use high power. When I talk about fast storage, I mean it's either RAM, which is the random access memory, and this this is available actually in abundance in high-end Android devices. It could reach 3 gigs, and I think it will soon reach 4 gigs in Android phones. There are only 1 gig of RAM in iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus, but it still performs well, although it's cheaper to Apple to manufacture them. So when I talk about innovative use of sensor, we've all seen with iPhone 1 how we had the tilt screen, the games that operate by tilting the screen, of course touch screen as well, and we had games that use the camera. But if we look at what's been happening until we reach today, the health applications of the sensors, like the heart monitor that Apple will include in their new Apple Watch, which Samsung also has in its Galaxy S5, then we can see how innovative it got actually. The companies that make software is, of course, as you know, all Apple, which started the smartphone industry with their Apple iOS. A few years later, or is it a few months later, who knows, Google started their Android, and they provided it to all phone manufacturers so they can compete with Apple. Windows kept their Windows 8 Mobile. Samsung has been developing their Tizen processor. Yola Sailfish, that's a phone operating system that we don't hear often. This was a Nokia project that was called MeeGo, and apparently Nokia failed to make it to the market. So, and as you may know, that Windows have already bought Nokia, so Nokia had abandoned this project, but some of Nokia's developers decided to continue the project and renamed it from MeeGo to Yola Sailfish, and they have recently released their first phone. And we have the Amazon Fire phone as well. The Amazon Fire phone, honestly, it's not the best phone out there. It's a low end. It's a low end phone. It's not the highest end. But the competition, as we all know, is between the first three. So it's either Apple, Google, or Windows. Windows is getting much better after they bought Nokia, and they're now releasing their own phone, Windows Phone, without the word Nokia in it. But I think soon we'll see the market divided equally between these three vendors, although Android is on top now, but who knows what will happen in the future. This is a brief idea of how mobile infrastructure has improved over the past 10 years. At first we only had calls and text. Then we had some sort of internet. GPRS had the ability to reach 20 kilobits per second. This is super slow. This is when, well, it's just super slow. Then we had Edge. Edge was also a 2G technology that came with the first iPhone. So we actually browsed internet on the first iPhone at 60 kilobits per second. And things, well, not suddenly, but over a few years jumped to 3.5G, which reaches up to 42 megabits per second. And now we have 4G LTE, which reaches up to 300 megabits per second. I think this is only in a few countries. Like the new iPhone only supports 150, and actually most of the new smartphones only support up to 150 megabits per second, as well as most of the providers. But this actually brings another issue to the picture. How much can a provider support? I mean, how many customers, how much data, how much traffic, how much calls? This is just to give you an idea of how mobile networks work, or cellular networks work. Let's assume that we're only using our phones for calls. So if we look at one of the technologies, which is GSM 900, we've got 124 channels, and that gives us 8 users per channel, and that allows for 992 calls per channel. I mean, not per channel, 992 calls for all channels at a given time. Take these numbers with a grain of salt. They're correct, but not 100% accurate. But we all know that we have more than 900 users. We have 100,000 millions. There are 1 billion mobile users in the world. How can we accommodate all of them with their limited number of channels? We can use the same channels more than once, right? So let's say here in Australia we can use, in Sydney we'll use the same channel, in Melbourne we'll use the same channel, in Gold Coast we'll use the same channels. So we'll have 900 users in every city. But is that enough? Of course not. We need to use the channels within the city more than once. So comes a technology called reuse, frequency reuse. In order to not have interference between the channels, if we reuse them in the same city, then we have to split the channels into smaller groups. So instead of having 124 channels per group, we'll have 4 groups with 31 channels in every one, and we'll not use the same group into adjacent cells. So if we use group F1 here, we'll use something else here, something else here, and then we can use F1 again here. And as we can see, there's always a group that separates the 2 other groups from each other. Of course, repeating this process into smaller scales will increase the capacity of the channel, but again will increase the cost, because when you split one cell, that means that you need to rent new places, that you need to build new mobile towers, that you need brand new infrastructure. So that's actually, this would multiply the cost by whatever the number that you're dividing into. For example, if you had 1 here, if you wanted to divide this cell to 6 smaller cells, then the cost of covering this area will multiply by 6. Let's move on to the top manufacturer of smartphones. Most of us are aware of Samsung and Apple. There are a few others that we see in the market, like Nokia or LG, or I don't know, Motorola. But there are a few providers like Huawei, like Lenovo and Xiaomi. These all are Chinese manufacturers. We rarely see their product in whether in Australia or actually outside of China. But what we can see here is how their market share is increasing. Like this was in Q2 2013. We can see that, well, Apple's share has increased from Q2 2013 to Q2 2014 from 31 million. This is million devices, and this is percentage of the market share. Although they sold more phones, we can see actually the market share have not increased. It has fallen down, and so has Samsung. So Samsung had 32% of the market, and now they have 25%. Apple had 13, now they have 11.9. Huawei had 4.8, and now they have 6.8. Lenovo has also increased. Xiaomi, look at this. They had 1.8%, and now they have 5%, and it's increasing. LG has dropped a little bit, and the others have increased. But by saying others, We all can include Motorola and a lot of Chinese providers. This is just an idea about the most innovative phones for this year. So we have Samsung's Note Edge. It's the first phone with a curved display. I think it looks stupid, but still very innovative. This is Huawei's Ascend P7 Sapphire. This phone is the first phone that has sapphire screen, which is supposed to be really hard, almost unbreakable. No other phone has it though. This is Oppo's N3. Oppo N3 has the first aluminum lithium alloy body, which is 3 times lighter than steel and super strong. So it will be very light and very strong and difficult to bend. This is Giyuni eLife S5.5. This phone has a 5-inch Full HD display and it's the slimmest smartphone in the world. It's 5.59 millimeters thick, or thin to be accurate. This phone has a metal body. It's very beautiful. It has an amazing camera. It doesn't have the best battery because it's thin, and as we know, the battery takes size. But again, it is innovative. It is high quality. It's innovative. It's not cheap. I think it goes for $500 US dollars. But I think it's one of the most innovative, because we should be able to see Apple achieve the thinnest phone, not other vendors. This is Xiaomi's Mi4, which is their latest highest end phone. The reason I included Xiaomi is because we've seen how their market share has increased from 1.8 to 5%, and their sales have increased from 4 million to 15 million. So it's actually doubled 4 times. This also had a 5-inch Full HD display with a metal frame, and we can see that is inspired by the iPhone 5 and 5S body. Most of Android phones have this IR blaster, which makes them act as remote controls. Apparently Apple doesn't care about incorporating an IR port to their phones, but Android users do actually use them. This is the OnePlus One. I would say this is the most interesting product of this year, 2014, because it was made by a group of people who decided to make the best phone with the lowest price. So it's supposedly selling for the cost price. So they're not making, I wouldn't say they're not making profit. I don't know how much profit they're making, but supposedly they're not making much profit. This phone has the highest, this phone was released at the beginning of this year, and at that time it had the highest specification, the best screen, the best camera, and the best processor with very high memory, large memory, good build quality, and it started to sell for $299. This is even cheaper than some less known phones, and even cheaper than Google's Nexus. Google's Nexus is supposed to be one of the cheapest high-end Android devices that you can get your hand on. It's worth looking at. This is Xiaomi's Redmi 1S. This is, I would believe, is the cheapest decent smartphone out there. This one sells in India for $99. It sells in China for a little bit over that. I think it's like $110 or $120. It doesn't sell in many other countries, so if you need it, you gotta order it either from India or from China. Then with the postage, it will reach definitely $150. Nevertheless, this phone has a similar screen to the iPhone S. It's got a 4.7 HD screen. It's got a similar camera, same memory, at least RAM. It's got only 8 gigs of memory, but it has the ability to add micro SD. So what I'm trying to say is there are phones out there that have similar specifications to the iPhone, and that sells for 6 or 7 times less than the iPhone 6. But if we look at this diagram from teardown.com, we can see that actually the iPhone is costing Apple more than $200. It's actually costing Apple $227. So this raises a question. If Apple pays $227 to make a phone with these specifications, then how can Xiaomi make a similar phone, definitely of lower quality and lower well, it's just actually lower quality and a bit thicker. It's not really much lower in specifications. But if Xiaomi is selling it for $99, then would it be fair that we can say that Xiaomi is paying $30 to make it? Would that be possible? I don't think so. I think Xiaomi's profit margin is much lower than Apple's. These are a few references that I used to prepare these PowerPoint slides. Thank you all for watching and listening, and please feel free to comment or give me any feedback or question. Thank you.